Good morning. Um, how's everyone doing? I'm waiting. Joking. Alright, so I've never really done this before for this purpose, but I just wanted to try this out and see how it goes. So I've had this story on Gideon this whole week. God has been speaking to me in regards to the leadership ability in the story of Gideon from the book of Judges in the Bible. Now, what I wanted to do was to kind of break that down and run through that just as quick as I can. So listen fast, right? There is a story to be learned from that book. Now, Gideon was mentioned in the book of Hebrews as well as a man of faith, right? But what was one of the things he did, because he also failed. He was also reluctant as to be a leader. So what did he do that would be a man of faith, right? So we're not going to dig into everything past probably the chapter 8. We're going to deal more specifically with chapter 6 and 7, when he's fighting the Midianites. That's what we're talking about, when Gideon defeated the Midianites. All right. So in this time, the Israelites, that's Gideon, right, and his people, they was doing bad. They was doing ugly. They just came out of Egypt. They thought they was gonna be rescued, but they decided they want to do their own thing. So God gave them to the Midianites for 7 years. Finally, 7 years were up. The Israelites, they've had enough. They said, hey, these Midianites, they're taking all of our food. They're taking all of our cattle. They're taking all of our crops. And see, at this time, their crops and their cattle was their form of money, the form of food. So basically, the Midianites have left them broke and hungry. And finally, they're crying out to God, saying, hey, we need someone, right? So God says, all right, you need someone. I'm going to send someone to save you then, all right? And he explained to them why all that was going on, right? But so this sounds like a lot like today, right? Midianites are leaving us broke and hungry. Well, some of us, right? So anyways, all right, so that's the background. Gideon, he was a farmer. All right, not much to him. He was a farmer. He was found by an angel inside of a wine press, because at the time the Midianites were looting the land and raiding, right? So he says, if I'm inside of this pit and I'm threshing my wheat, meaning he's getting the little shell out, right? And he's separating his crops. He says, they'll leave me alone. So the angel showed up to him inside of a pit, right? This is a farmer. The angel appeared to Gideon and says, hey, you mighty man, you mighty hero. He's like, he greets him with that name, right? Why would an angel greet Gideon, a lowly farmer hiding inside of a press, as a mighty hero? So right off the bat, right, you have something, right? And so the angel appears to him, and not only does he call him a hero, but an angel appeared to him, right? So he was a farmer. Why would the angel call him a mighty hero? It's not making sense, right? So the angel tells Gideon to go with his strength and rescue Israel. Go with Gideon's strength. Well, that's when Gideon replies. He says he was just the one who would expect. He says, how can I rescue Israel? He says, my clan is the weakest, and I'm the least of them all. So he's saying, man, I'm the lowest one. Why in the world would you call me mighty hero? Why in the world would you say that I'm rescuing us? I've got the smallest ones, and I'm the runt of the litter, and I've got the smallest family. What do you mean we're going to rescue Israel? You crazy? And so the angel says, all right. He says, go, and God will be with you. And so you see that? So first he said, go with your strength, right? But now he's saying, go, and I'll be with you. So he gave him that opportunity, right? And so Gideon's response is, he's like, all right, I'll do this. He says, but I've got something for you. Don't leave. So he goes home, and I'm just breaking it down. He brought a steak, he brought some bread, and he brought some broth back. and he says, I'm glad you're here. He says, and then he wanted a sign. He gave the steak and to the angel still sitting there. The angel says, all right, put it on that rock over there. Puts the steak down. He says, all right, put the bread on top. Puts the bread on top. He says, all right, now pour the broth over everything. So Gideon's like, all right. So he pours the broth over the bread and the steak on top of this rock. The angel grabs his staff, right, his wooden staff, and he touches the bread and the meat. And as soon as he touches that, the rock just blows up with fire, right? So now Gideon has seen an angel. He's being called a mighty hero by the angel, and now he has seen rock engulf a steak and some bread out of a rock, right? So he's already seen multiple signs, and so he's like, all right. He's like, I guess I got this. And so he's like, if you're gonna help me though, he's tripping out. He said, if you're gonna help me, he says, I still want some proof, right? So he's still a little iffy. He starts gathering his men, right? And so he says, all right, God, he says, I believe you, but if you're going to help me, he's like, I want you to still prove it again, right? So I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to put down this wool blanket, and when I wake up, I want the wool blanket to be wet while the ground is dry. He says, hey, if you're going to help me, right? So all through all this, and Gideon is still reluctant, man. Why? You've already had so many times of proof. You still want proof. Wakes up. The wool is wet, ground is dry. He's, oh, no, that's natural. He's like, so, God, all right. Please excuse my request, but I got another request. He said, because that could happen. He says, I want you to do this again. I'm going to lay it out, but this time I want the wool dry and the ground wet, because, it's natural. It could have happened anyway, right? Goes to sleep, wakes up. What happens? Wool is dry, ground is wet. Crap, all right, God, I believe you, right? So he's still reluctant, gathers his men, he gathers 32,000 men, right? The Midianites are in hordes. I mean, they are a huge, massive army, right? God says, all right, you got your 32,000, but I want it to be smaller, because if you use 32,000, you can say you defeated them, and your men can say that you defeated them on your own strength. He says, I don't want that. He said, I want you to only say that I could do it, because only I'm the one giving you the strength. I said, go with my strength, go with me, I will be with you. He says, so ask them who's scared. Send the ones who scared home. He did that. 20,000 men left, right? I'm sorry, 22,000. He's got 10,000 left. So he, the guy says, all right, 10,000, that's still way too many. Take him down to the creek. He says, let's test him. He says, tell him to get a drink from the water. Those who cup the water, keep. Those who bring their mouth to the ground, to the water, send home. He did that and was left with 300. 300 men. God says, all right, that's plenty. 300 against thousands. But I just thought of 300, I think of Sparta, Haru, right? But anyways, a little background of that is if you think about it, and it's not in there, is those who cupped the water, grabbed the water, and brought the water to their face, they're able to look forward, right? Those who went down on one knee and drank out of the river, they've taken their eyes off of battle. They cannot see battle and stay focused this way. They're more worried about this, what's directly in front of them, versus I see the prize. I'm going to keep my eye on the prize. They're ready for whatever's coming. So in my mind, that's what I see as God kept those 300 for. All right. So that night, Gideon has his 300. God wakes Gideon up. He says, get up. It's time. Right? He says, I've given you the land. But, Gideon, I know you're still not going to believe me. If you don't believe me, he says, I want you to go down, take a man, and listen to what they're saying. So, pay attention to that. God said, I've already given you the land, but he already knew that Gideon was going to doubt anyways. And he already made way for that to happen, where he's like, hey, just go listen, right? He's like, all right. So he goes to the edge of camp with this guy, and he's looking over the edge, and he sees camels that looks like grains of sand. That's how many there were. He sees men like hordes of locusts, he says. So that's how many men there were. There was just massive, thousands amounts of people down there. He's like, oh crap. And then he just caught the end of this conversation between two of the Midianites, who were talking about a dream. One guy tells the other the dream, and the other guy's like, you know what that means, right? That means that God has already given this land over to Gideon. As soon as Gideon hears this, Gideon is like, yes, thanks. He said, God, I believe you, right? So it took fire from a rock, seeing an angel, being called a mighty hero by an angel. It took bringing down to 300. It took seeing the face of this thing. All this, and finally he's like, oh, now I believe you. So as a leader, a man of faith, look at how much reluctance he had. Look at how much pushback he gave, right? God will use anyone. His purpose by God was to defeat these Midianites at the time. But God still used him despite the way he was acting, right? So think about that. God can use you, right? The loneliest, the lowliest, and the weakest he will use, right? Anyways, alright, so let that sink in. Alright, so Gideon goes back, finds his men, and he says, hey, we're ready. We got this. God gave us the land, man. I'm excited, man. He grabs his men, he splits his 300 into 3 groups, right? Each with 100. They all have their sword, they all have their trumpet. They surround the Midian camp on all sides, 300 versus thousands. And at the same time, they blow their trumpet, right? And they lift their fire, their torch. As soon as they blow their trumpet, the Midianites within the valley become confused to the point where they're beating each other up. They kill each other, and those who don't kill someone kill their partner. Right? God made them confused. Those who did not die from their peer, their commandant, right, ran away. And so Gideon chased them down and killed the rest. But it was at that point that Gideon won that land. He beat the Midianites. And if you pay attention, God used the lowliest, the weakest man to become a great man of faith, the most reluctant man to win this huge battle without lifting a sword. He didn't lift a sword. None of his men lifted a single sword. All they did was put up their torch, throw it on the ground, boom, big old fire. The Midianites became confused, beat each other up, and they went home. It goes on to talk about Gideon, on how he, about an ephod that he wore and how that became an idol, and he talked about how he failed and stuff like that. But what I want to get at is how God can use you, right, to do great things that you couldn't do on your own. And that's what I'm getting at. I'm going to wrap this up real quick. Just recently, I'm trying to submit a warrant officer packet, right? And God was able to put this whole thing into real life for me. Because he is proving that the only way that this is going to happen is the same way with Gideon, is that this will only happen with him. So because I've got a heart condition and it's still showing an abnormal EKG, I do not meet qualification standards to submit this packet. So I've heard what God said. I mean, I've heard what the doctor said, but I know what God says. He's called me to be successful. Head, never the tail. Always above and never beneath. So I'm driving on, and I know that I'm going to submit this packet. I will get selected as a warrant officer. I will get this waiver approved for this heart condition, and I will be able to come out and say, look, the same way that God did with Gideon and defeated that huge army, that big task, and Gideon didn't do it on his own. It's the same way it's going to be with me. I know it. And I just want to lift you guys up. I want to encourage you all today and say that God can use you. God will use you. You have to let him. Don't think that you're the weakest. Don't think, don't push him back. Because even when you push back, and whatever, God will say, no, I can still use you. God defeated uh, those Midianites for Gideon without even lifting a single hand sword. So anyways, hope that I relayed this pretty well. Um, let's see. I think that's about it. There's I just want to start kind of doing these every now and then because I can write the stuff out, but I just feel that there's power to words when you speak them out. And many stories are out there on Gideon and his leadership role, his capabilities. But I just wanted to put my 2 cents in about it and just give you an opportunity to listen. I know if I put all this on paper, I wouldn't read it all. But anyways, thank you for your time. Love you all, and I just pray that these words have encouraged you. I pray that these words have lifted you up, motivated you, and I'll just finish by saying, let's be the change. Alright, let's be the change. This world needs to change. Alright, things need to change. Life needs to change. But it all starts with you. Alright, peace.